So I want to have a discussion with you about jobs, the economy, and the rise of AI, which we talked about yesterday. And you had some brilliant comments on this because we have a wonderful community. And I want to share this with you. So let's jump right in. So first, this is from David. And David writes, Chris, I design data centers. And important thing to understand is most problems with DCs are caused by people, the operators and technicians. Okay. So he's referring to these things as DCs, so data centers, and saying most of these problems when you operate these things is caused by people. He also says here, so our goal with the new DC designs, so the data center designs, is to replace as many people as possible with AI and machines. So even the biggest DCs can be run by a handful of people who are not even on site. And so I knew that the data centers, like the whole goal is to replace people, but I didn't necessarily know that data centers, like the whole goal also is to replace people who work at the data center and who can, I guess, if we have any workers, can operate these things remotely. So that was new to me, and this is sort of why I like to learn every day with you all. So trust me, there will only ever be a handful of jobs created by DCs, again, data centers, most of them temporary. And I've told you guys this before when Trump, he always talks about, we're bringing all these trillions of dollars and look at all of this, new AI industry that's going to create so many jobs. So that'll be true temporarily, right? You'll be building the road to the data center. You'll put the power lines to the data center. You'll install the equipment. You'll build the building. But that's a temporary thing. And then after the data center is built, this is according to David, who says literally, work in this industry, designing these things. The whole goal is to basically design these things so they don't use that many people. I mean, this is what it is. And, more, it also says here, and most of the services running on DCs will also be operated using AI. Like Dr. Hinton, I'm hoping for a major AI disaster and economic crash, as that may be the only thing that can save us. But to be frank, I'm not hopeful. And what he's referring to, you can see my last video on that, but the basic gist of it is, at the moment, all of the tech bros, and you could say are, political leaders, so this would be the Trump people and Musk or whatever, they're pushing full, steam ahead. The markets, you could say Wall Street is into this as well, pushing full steam ahead to build as many data centers as possible. Because the goal is to reduce margins, right? They want to replace people because, hey, why do I have to deal with pesky humans when I can just have AI do the work? They can do it 24/7, right? But the downsides are pretty big, and this is why we're talking about this. Downsides, right? What are you going to do with all the people that are out of work? Downsides will be not only do you have people out of work, who is then going to consume all of the products in USA, because the economy is basically run on, we have a bunch of goods, people buy a bunch of goods, right? 70% of the economy is consumerism. So how does this function if none of us have jobs? I mean, that's a key question. And the data center thing, a lot of it is smoke and mirrors that the Trump people run, right? When they say, we're building all these great data centers and the AI, and we're going to be a leader in the world. Trump always says all this stuff. And I don't know why the MAGA base doesn't pick up on what's obvious. Like, I just have an honest conversation about what we're investing in, I guess you could say, markets, economies, etc. Here's another person, and I just wanted to see this larger macro implications. So this is from Stacy. Stacy says, the big problem is Trump supporters that are blue collar are not skilled, but think they are. And that is really a good point. I actually agree with that. I know it sounds mean, but there's some truth to this, right? Read it again. The big problem is Trump supporters that are blue collar are not skilled, but think they are. I work as an accountant in automotive for 18 years. She's been doing this a long time. Those workers made of lots of quality mistakes and automation was more efficient and reliable, not the humans. And I think, and I'd like to hear from people who work in, say, the automotive industry or other types of industries. I think this just sounds logical. So I don't mean to be hating on humans, but there are certain tasks that I could totally see that a machine would be more efficient and, less prone to make mistakes. And talking just my own personal experience, I actually had a friend back in high school, and my friend, his like uncle owned like a temp service. And so what we would do is use my friend's uncle's temp service, and we would do like all these odd jobs around Portland. And I did all kinds of jobs, and a couple of times I worked in like a machine press factory thing, and so I had to like pull this bar thing down to like press metal. It's the best way to describe it. I don't even know exactly what that thing was for. I remember the job very clearly, but I just don't know, because that's kind of you're like a cog in the machine. Or you would do these odd jobs of like I remember there was a conveyor belt one time, and there was like a box coming down, and I had to like put books in the box basically. And true story. Also, I had a coworker who spoke Spanish, and I'd have them help me learn Spanish, basically count the books as they come down in Spanish, and learn how to say all the different phrases to do the job all in Spanish. It was to keep my mind engaged. But the point is that there's some jobs that I think a machine would be better at something like that. And probably for the assembly line for cars, that's why we've automated many of these things. And so that's why it's always disingenuous when the Trump people say, oh, it's all due to the brown people taking your jobs, right? They took our jobs, right? Basically, that's what Trumpers, think. But it's a lot of it's automation. And just from a macro perspective, I completely understand this, right? She says, I worked as an accountant in automotive for 18 years. Those workers made lots of quality mistakes, and automation was more efficient and reliable. I can see that, not the humans. It doesn't mean that machines are always better than humans, but in some situations, I can totally see that. Here it says here, I hated being at work when there was a shift change. They came out of the production floor shouting, banging on the walls. It was like seeing the zombies in 28 days. That's referring to the movie. And this is just an honest conversation about stuff. And I do appreciate your insight, both David and Stacy. And then we also have another comment here. This is from Sean. Sean says, we've never recovered from losing drafters and switchboard operators. And this actually affected me when you put it in this way. I back in high school, I'm just referring to my high school days, or even before middle school, I knew people, adults, that were in these situations, in these type of jobs, right? And you'll hear about job losses or job cuts. This would be back in like say the 80s and 90s, because I'm old. I'm 50 if you don't know. And I remember the lots of different discussions that you'll hear. And I remember seeing when I was a kid, and I don't know if they still do this in USA. I just don't know. But as a kid, you'd always see like commercials for like ITT, technical training, and institute, and they were kind of like training school kind of commercials all the time. They'd always say, are you out of work? Are you struggling? Get new training. And they would run these commercials all the time. So I don't know if they run the kind of commercials in USA still, but that was a big part of growing up in USA. I remember people were really struggling, and it was obvious things were changing. Regarding the draftsman jobs or the drafting jobs, I remember when CAD came out. That was, I think it stands for computer aided design. And that was a thing when I was a kid. I learned Turtle Graphics when I was a kid, which is like really, really basic if you're old enough to remember what Turtle Graphics is. But CAD was like considered like the new thing at that time. And then, now for younger kids, which is different than my era, the meme was always like, you better learn to code if you want a job in the market. Basically, things are changing all the time. And this article came out, which corresponds to your comments that we just talked about in the Washington Post. And it says the biggest careers that have now vanished according to data. And the point being is that a lot of jobs that used to exist, like the most common jobs, say in the USA, and in many countries, not just USA, don't exist anymore really, right? So just to give you some examples, factories replaced cobblers before factory jobs went overseas. And the way they hear the headline, it sort of gives a certain implication, but I'll just say this. Much of it is automation. And yes, some of the jobs are overseas. So it's a combination of both, but much of it is automation. But here you have shoemakers and repairers, mine workers, blacksmiths, right? These jobs used to exist in USA. This data goes back like, a couple hundred years. It doesn't exist now so much in the USA. Sailors and deckhands, tailors, brick masons, and stonemasons. The sailor and deckhand one's an interesting one. Something that Yeji and I, my wife, we talk about all the time. Here in Korea, it's hard to get just Koreans to do the job. So they bring in a lot of labor from other places, be it the Philippines, Vietnam, various countries will come and basically work the fishing boats or shrimping boats or various things. So I can't speak to, say, in USA if that is a thing, and I can't speak to why local Koreans here don't want to do those kind of jobs. But I was just saying those jobs still do exist. There's still people out fishing and stuff like that. But I guess it used to be much more, say, that type of job in USA. Tailors, I think there's always still going to be handmade clothes, but it's not necessarily going to be done in USA. They tried that. I've talked about this before on the channel. I remember there was a company. I want to say it's called American Apparel, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the name of the brand. And when I was at university, I remember there was an American Apparel right across the street, and I'd always go in the store and it's like crazy expensive because yes, it's made in USA, handmade. It's going to be, or not. I don't know if they're handmade, but just made in USA. It's going to come in. The costs are going to come in higher than if you make it from outside. And so as a consumer, and if you don't see a much higher quality, it's hard to make the choice to buy that brand, and they ultimately didn't do well. In the past, though, I remember there was I think it might have been the 70s or 80s, and for those who are older, you probably remember this stuff. I think there was a time when they used to really promote U.S. made jeans. Wasn't it like look for the U.S. label or something like that? I remember that was a campaign. Anyone, I'd studied American history, and I kind of remember those things. But there was always a time to promote certain kinds of jobs or industries, but it's hard forever if just the writing's on the wall, right? Brick masons and stone masons. We just don't like brick that much anymore. I was thinking about that also as a conversation that we have many times on the channel. In USA, a lot of homes are made of wood, not necessarily brick anymore, right? So that just doesn't necessarily exist. Cabinet makers, millers, boatmen, and canal men. The cabinet maker miller one is interesting because I know Trump recently he put tariffs on imported like furniture goods. So I guess basically Trump doesn't want us to buy IKEA. IKEA is popular. You guys know this, but trying to, I guess, theoretically revitalize that. And that's not just cabinet. I guess I'm combining cabinet with furniture, but these kind of industries, there's just not that many people do it these days. Compositors and typesetters. So that was never a big job, but it's kind of gone now. Metal molders, meat cutters, fishermen and oystermen. So I guess that's different than deckhands, and they're putting fishermen deckhand different. Stone cutters and carvers, sawyers. I don't even know what that job is. I'm being frank with you. I don't know. If you can write in the comments, tell me what a sawyer is. I really don't know. I don't even know what that is. I just don't know. Plasterers and millwrights. And then this is also interesting. And I'm showing you guys this stuff because I just want you to see that we've experienced changes in the economy and jobs that we do before. This is the march of history, you could call it. So USA was, green is largely farmers and farm workers. This goes back to 1850. And as you go through, the colors change. So then you're going to start to see blues and pinks. So then you're going to go to factories. Then you can go to clerical. And so that would include retail. So that would be the blues and the pinks, right? Factory and retail. And then as you scroll down more, you're going to hit more orange colors. And that's going to go into more services and professionals, essentially what it is. And where we are right now, and I'm just kind of skipping ahead to, you can see the orange part of the map, is what happens when the AI then replaces a lot of the professional jobs or call center type jobs. And I think the easiest way to think about it is in the prior video we talked about where Hinton was saying, before when you'd have someone who would say, just dig a ditch, dig a hole, just basically manual labor. That job is gone. Then you go into a call center, right? That type of job. And if AI replaces that job, where do all those people go? And I think that's where the real problem is because, when people say that, when we invest in, new industry, it'll create a bunch of new jobs that we don't even know yet exist. This time, may be quite different, and that's sort of why I wanted to show you the comments of the community, because there's just a reality. There are some things that machines are better at in many things, and I know it's an uncomfortable topic, but I just want to be honest with you about this stuff. However, it doesn't mean that we should just eliminate humans entirely, and in fact, if we work together, in my opinion, put our best minds in the room and have in a way of compassionate towards people, not just always pushing towards profits. This is how you solve these problems, right? I don't pretend to have the answer to like everything in the whole world, But what I can tell you is, in my experiences, I was a university professor for many, many years. That's the environments that you want, is to create environment that cares about humans, put humans first, get lots of different perspectives and ideas in the room, and solve problems together. And I get emotional about that kind of stuff, because I just think about the Trumpy world as, gather just your friends from Florida that all look a certain way and only one religion and one language, and then just figure out ways to get rich. That's essentially what you're literally seeing live in USA right now, and that's sort of why a lot of people are suffering. And then you fool everyone to think that you care about regular people. It's clearly not the case. And so that's, I can't pretend to have the solution that, going to wave my magic wand and everyone's going to have a job and plenty of money. I can't, figure that out. But I think the best thing to do is you collect as, a team of people and as many, minds in the room, again, putting compassion first. And this shows you also too the value of strong leadership that lead people in the right directions. I'll give you another example. There was a brilliant discussion. It was with Bill Nye the Science Guy. And if you don't know, I got my start with Bill Nye way back in college. That was like my first internship and really introduced me to education and, educational broadcasting, which is something I've always been interested in. And Tyson was there also. It's like the famous, how you want to describe it, like an astronomer person, like a space science person. And they were talking about, what's the number one thing that we can do? The question was like, what's the number one technology that we could do that would make everyone's lives better? And the answer wasn't necessarily, it was kind of a dodge, because it wasn't, he's phrased it in a great way. It wasn't like any particular technology. He was just saying, hey, we need to just educate, all the children in science and get the entire population working on our toughest problems. And they also use the example of, get more women in science, more women in STEM, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be a male-dominated industry. But point being, though, if we can use 100% of our population to solve our toughest problems and collect the best minds and put in a room and put people first, we can solve these problems. And also, I think it's important to be honest about these things, because, I don't lament like, oh, there's no one who is a millwright anymore, or, say fisherman or whatever, just for example, because maybe some jobs that we're going to find better ways and more efficient ways to do said things, right? And our lives will get better over time. It's not a great thing to go work out in the farm for 12 hours a day. It's hard work. And I know firsthand, I used to bale hay when I was a kid. And I've talked about it several times on the channel. I used to pick berries. I grew up in Oregon, didn't have a lot of money, had to do these kind of things. And, when you do those kind of jobs, it's just like, in my opinion, I'm getting an education. I'm going to put my resources to do something else. And that's, what I end up doing. But I think that if we, I guess the right word to say, if we focus our energies to helping people to, and people do need to have jobs. With people who say that, we're all going to just have UBI, universal basic income, and no one has a job, and we're all just going to have money that way. People lose meaning in their lives if they don't have something to do. And this is why I say, and I know many people, older people watch the channel, why when you get older, even if you retire from your main job, you may take a part-time job doing something else, or you may pick up a craft or a hobby, because you always need to be doing something, and myself included. I always want to be doing something and learning something new every day to keep my mind occupied. I think it's important for everyone to, always have goals in your life and things you want to do to go forward. So, and that's why I also appreciate community, because I learn something new every day about lots of different places, lots of different industries, and lots of type of jobs. So that's my thoughts on this. I always appreciate your comments and you hanging out on the channel, and I'll catch you on the next video.